I love it. I love it. I love it. Look at this. This is the greatest thing I've ever seen.
And I'm not surprised.
What's up, homies? Leighton here for UFC Gambling Addicts, back again with another UFC full card breakdown and predictions video. Before we get into UFC 248, this is an amazing pay-per-view card, 2 title fights on this card, really tough matchups to predict. Before we get into that, we're going to do our normal routine, take a little look at Norfolk, Virginia, some bets and some comments. If you don't want to stick around for that at the start of the video, you can use the timestamps in the description below. Okay, so let's take a look at some bets. Very, very good profit on the night. Basically half a grand profit. Very, very happy with it. Grant Dawson in a couple parlays. Magomed Ankalaev finishing one. Megan Anderson finishing one. We hit some good underdogs with Spike Carlisle, Brendan Allen, Figueiredo, Kyler Phillips. Yeah, really, really good night for bets and profit. Now let's get into some comments. Thomas Howard, Griffin, Pena, Dawson, Spencer parlay. Let's go. Beautiful parlay. He hit that one. He was quite happy with it as well. Commented straight after he hit it. Even posted on the breakdown before the last leg was in. So yeah, Thomas Howard, congratulations with that parlay, man. Nice hit. JJ Maxwell hit 300 last night with Fig by KO and a parlay with Fig, Spencer and Megan. So another guy hitting a decent parlay there. Congratulations, JJ Maxwell. Noah Allen, underdogs. Allen, Brady, Cutelaba and Carlisle. I see Carlisle and Allen grinding out, keeping them on the mat, and Brady and Cutelaba I see being the surprise finishes. Well, 3 out of 4. I know you will complain on the Cutelaba one. We all saw it. Horrible stoppage. Kevin McDonald would be having a nightmare if he went back and watched that, and there's no doubt he went back and watched that absolutely horrible stoppage. But I will also say you would be 3 out of 4 on underdogs if that fight wasn't stopped, because I took Magomed, so I have to say he was going to go on to win that fight. But good picks anyway, Noah. Casual Cucumber. I have spinning low leg kick, the like button. Oh, guys, what are we going to do for that like button? Maybe spinning low leg kick. Maybe we'll go with that again. Or maybe some type of DARS, rear naked. Maybe like a knee bar. Let me know in the comments. Kevin Silla. Love this effing channel, bro. Your hard work has helped me win thousands. Keep it up, by the way. I nut-shotted the like button. Rothwell Struve style. Man, I'm not sure about nut-shotting it. It's not a decent technique to use, mate. You don't want to go for the groin, but man, I appreciate your kind words. Thank you. And I'm glad I can help you. Okay, so let's do a quick 5-minute recap. My quick thoughts on Benavidez versus Figueiredo, the whole card. Like I said before, if you don't want to hear this, you can use the timestamps below for any fight you want to listen to on this card, if you want to skip ahead. Okay, real quick, first fight of the night, Sean Brady versus Nordiev. This was a good fight. First round, Nordiev looked good. Second round, Brady started to really come back. In the third round, we saw the broken man versus the guy in there who was more hungry. Brady was just relentless with the takedown, and Nordiev had, he just couldn't stand tall and pill. Had no clue how to do that. Completely exhausted. Massive credit to Brady and anyone who took that pick too. Spike Carlisle and Alon Cruz. This was over quite quick in the first round. Spike Carlisle landed a nasty, vicious elbow right into the ear of Alon Cruz. Some say it was illegal. Mike Bisping at the time was speaking about the strike being illegal. I felt, beautiful. Straight into the ear. Jordan Griffin, TJ Brown, another decent fight. TJ Brown, I'm happy with that pick. I really am. I felt that guy showed me good moments in that fight with a few takedowns. Survived a few submission attempts as well. Prior to that fight, I said if he can survive the submissions, it's really going to paint a story for the judges with the takedowns. But Jordan Griffin was eventually able to get a beautiful choke. So massive credit to Jordan Griffin there too. Luis Pena, Garcia, bit boring. You know, Pena wasn't too happy with his performance. But a win's a win. You know, he backpacked him. He took the back, stayed there pretty much anytime he could be there, and got the win. Tybura and Spivak. Man, this one, both guys didn't look great in this fight. Spivak's boxing just wasn't enough to keep Tybura from doing what he wanted to do in that fight. I noticed every time Spivak hit Tybura with like a 1-2, Spivak would just back up. And Tybura is now allowed to come off the fence. If you go back and watch Tybura versus Sakai and other guys, you know, when Tybura gets backed up, they don't let him off the fence. Spivak allowed him to dictate the movement and his takedowns, and that's why Spivak didn't find success in that fight. Brendan Allen and Tom Breeze. I felt Tom Breeze gave up a little too quick in this fight. Good grappling situations happening on the mat. Tom Breeze just wasn't able to take the back or really get away from the grappling. Brendan Allen is a guy who's all in with this sport, and we really saw that. You know, Tom Breeze really shelled up a little bit in there for me. Kyler Phillips and Gabriel Silva. This was a really fun fight to watch. Both guys, BJJ wizards, just going at it on the feet pretty much. Even the grappling was really fun to watch. Kyler Phillips with a few scrambles, really impressive. Yeah, another dog that I got on that card. Kyler Phillips, man, the movement, the kicks, it was all too much for Gabriel Silva. Grant Dawson and Darrick Minner. Man, I got a little scared in this fight a few times, and I know a few of you guys who took Dawson did as well. Darrick Minner coming close a couple times, man, with some chokes. But Grant Dawson, you know, eventually was able to weather that onstorm of jiu-jitsu from Minner, eventually able to get his own submission. Megan Anderson, Norma Dumont. I felt Norma was performing well for the first 2 or 3 minutes in this fight. But Megan Anderson, man, when she got away from the fence, you saw that frame. That frame was the real factor in this fight. Beautiful right hand, I believe it was, to set down Norma. I also do think the stoppage was a little bit early. Maybe let Norma eat 2 or 3 more on the mat. Obviously, we know about Ankalaev and Kutalaba being a horrible, horrible stoppage. Spencer and Zara, what can we really say, man? We all pretty much expected Felicia to use her groundwork in this one. I felt she would potentially look to choke out Zara, but she opted with the ground and pound in this one. And the main event, what can I say? I know a lot of you guys and a lot of people was on Joey Benavidez this week, but what can I say, man? My boy done it. Davison Figueiredo, he got it done. He's a nasty, nasty guy, man. When you look at the tool set that Davison Figueiredo has, it's hard to deny this guy at 125. You know, he's a boxer, he's a wrestler, he's a Muay Thai practitioner, he's a BJJ practitioner, and he fights out of a karate stance. This guy's the future. Some people may say, well, Figueiredo missed weight and he beat Joey B. This feels like the 125 division is dead because there's no champion. I disagree. I think he potentially saved the 125 division, you know? Joey Benavidez has been fighting for what? 15, 16, 17 years? And to see a guy fight that long and still be at the top of the 125 division, that to me would be a dead division. So Davison Figueiredo, in my opinion, saved the 125ers. Okay, let's get into UFC 248. First fight of the night, we have Deron Winn versus Gerard GM3 Meerschaert. And we're going to start with the wrestler, Deron Winn. So Deron comes into this fight 1 win, 1 loss inside the UFC. Training out of AKA with the boys DC and Habib. For those of you who don't know, Deron Winn is a very, very good wrestler. However, wrestling is very different to MMA. A wrestling match is 7 minutes or so. To utilize good wrestling inside the octagon, you have to be able to secure that position. Deron Winn is only 5'6", 5'7", and not really much of a striker. You know, he's wrestled his whole life. A very, very good wrestler. And we've seen so far, you know, against Darren Stewart, he got those takedowns. But Darren was able to posture off of the head, use his frame, use elbows off of his back to unsettle the wrestler. And eventually he was able to continuously get back to his feet in that second and third round from Deron Winn. Looking at Deron's debut against Eric Spicely, he didn't use his wrestling in this fight. He just used big mustard shot after big mustard shot, you know. Really looking to put Eric Spicely out on his feet. Now, GM3 comes into this fight 5 wins, 4 losses inside the UFC. Primarily a BJJ practitioner inside the octagon, a black belt to be precise. 10 plus submission wins over his MMA career so far. Looking back at his last few fights, his fight with Eric Anders was very, very close. I felt GM3 potentially should have grappled more early in that fight. Against Trevin Giles and Kevin Holland, there was a lot of grappling in those fights too. So I think it's fair to say for GM3, he does fight his type of fight more than not. Now, both of these guys are grapplers. Deron is the wrestler and GM3 is the BJJ player. I think Deron is going to have more speed to his punches. He's more explosive, more athletic than GM3. But on the flip side, GM3 is going to have the height and the reach advantage and the octagon experience advantage. So, yeah, this fight really can go either way. I think it's GM3's fight to lose. But for some reason, man, I'm favouring Deron Winn here. I don't think he's going to take down GM3 because of that jiu-jitsu. You know, you look at the debut against Eric Spicely. He didn't want to use his wrestling because of the black belt. Against Darren Stewart, it was wise to try and grapple in that one because Darren's able to move way better than a guy like Eric Spicely and GM3. So, yeah, I feel it is GM3's fight to lose. He should be looking to use his jiu-jitsu in this one and his body kicks. But I think the hand speed and the punching power of Deron Winn could be the factor also. So for those reasons, I'm going to take Deron Winn to get this one done via TKO in round number 1. So we're going to take a look at some odds in this fight. We have Deron Winn coming in minus 155, minus 150. GM3 coming back plus 135. Yeah, the line is maybe a little surprising to me because GM3 does have a big experience advantage. And he is going to be looking to use that BJJ on the mat. Like I said, if Deron Winn takes down Meerschaert, if he isn't able to secure the position, you know, if Meerschaert's able to find an arm, a neck, the back, then it's really going to go against Deron Winn. That's why I think he's going to keep this fight standing and just look to pepper Meerschaert with big shots. Then I could kind of see minus 150 being fair for Deron. But if this fight does go to the mat, if GM3 starts to use his body kicks a lot, it could be a very close fight. But I am going to take Deron Winn in that one. Okay, guys, fight number 2. We have Jamal Pretty Boy Emmers versus Giga Chikadze. And we're going to start with Jamal Emmers. So Jamal Emmers comes into this fight 17 wins, 4 losses as a pro, making his UFC debut. Emmers fought back on the Contender Series 2018. He was head kick finished by Julian Erosa. Since that fight, he's had 4 fights, finished all 4. The competition, not the greatest in the world, but nowhere near the worst either. So you could say he deserves this shot, this debut shot in the UFC. Jamal is primarily a wrestler and a kickboxer inside the octagon. I see him being way more comfortable with his kicks than his punches. He does like to take his opponent down too. He really likes to use his wrestling inside the octagon. Giga Chikadze comes into this fight 1-0 inside the UFC. For those who don't know, Giga is a very, very good kickboxer. Former Glory kickboxer. Absolutely would invite anyone to a kicking battle. You know, so Jamal Emmers, like I said, I see this guy being a better kicker than a puncher. Giga is going to like that. You know, he's going to prefer his opponents to be kickers over punchers because that's what he's used to. He's a very, very good kickboxer. A little bit like Brad Riddell. Now, Giga had his debut against Brandon Davis. And I do remember quite a few of you guys taking Davis in that fight. You felt his jiu-jitsu and his groundwork would expose the kickboxer. I understood that point of view. I understood that side. I completely get that pick. But the only problem I had with that is when we watch Brandon Davis fight, we see him use his jiu-jitsu when his opponent takes him down. We don't really see Brandon Davis look to take down the opponent and use his jiu-jitsu. You know, so to have him become a different guy over a few week period, to perform in a different way than he's used to, I didn't really subscribe to that point of view. Now here, I think that point of view is legit. Jamal Emmers does take down his opponents. He does use his wrestling. So although I didn't believe the grappling would be the answer in the debut, now we are faced with Giga really does have to focus staying on his feet here because Emmers is a good wrestler. It's a very tough fight to predict. Giga will pretty much kickbox with anyone. You know, he's a very, very good kicker. His measuring of time, his range with the kicks, the way he just kind of slips back from a low kick just to fire his own kick straight after, really, really impressive. Like I said, obviously the concern would be Jamal Emmers taking down Giga. It's a very, very tough fight to predict, but I'm going to stick with the kickboxer. I really believe in this guy. You know, he is aware that the grappling is going to be the concern for his part of the game. So for me, man, if Giga can keep it standing, if he can continue to kick Emmers, just look to be in a kickboxing battle, even if he gets taken down, you know, the way he postured up against the fence, against Brandon Davis, was impressive. You know, he was able to eventually get out of that position. So if he is able to keep this kickboxing more than not, I do see him having a very good time against Jamal Emmers. So for those reasons, I'm going to take Giga Chikadze via TKO in round number 2. And we take a look at some odds. We have Giga coming in plus 150. Jamal Emmers minus 170. Completely understand why. Jamal Emmers is more of an MMA guy. Chikadze more of a kickboxer. But for those who say, you know, you have to be able to grapple inside the octagon, you have to be able to do this, just remember, kicking and punching is a huge part of what happens in MMA. And Giga is a very, very good kicker. So although he's not going to be the best wrestler, the best BJJ guy, he is in the Barboza club. And that's a very hard club to be in. So yeah, Giga plus 150. I'm willing to take a shot there. Fight number 3, we have Guido Ninja Cannetti versus Batgirl Danaa. And we're going to start with the Argentine Cannetti. So Guido Cannetti comes into this fight 2 wins, 3 losses inside the UFC. Now 40 years of age, which obviously is a red flag. Guido is primarily a Muay Thai striker inside the octagon, can get very, very aggressive in there. Looking back at his last performance against Marlon Vera, you know, he lost that fight. But when you go back and watch it, you don't feel like he's 40 years old. You know, I see determination. I still see fight in his game. You look at that first round against Marlon Vera, you know, and that's a guy we all appreciate. You know, a real, real nasty killer. Up and coming guy, getting better and better every single fight. And Guido was able to compete in that first round. Had some very decent moments. And like I said, with that aggression, man, he really can shine with that aggression. And that scores on the judges' scorecards too. Now the problem is, if you get over aggressive inside the octagon, a counter hand can put you out. Marlon Vera got really nasty in that second round. Basically met Guido at his own game of aggression in the clinch, and Cannetti faded in there. But man, like I said, 40 years old, watching his last performance, I still see determination in this guy. Batgirl Danaa comes into this fight 0 wins, 1 loss inside the UFC. Primarily a striker inside the octagon. Now, looking at this guy's debut, I enjoyed that fight. I did take Batgirl in his debut. Very, very close. I felt his waiting was the downfall in that fight. Like I said, it was very close. But as a counter striker, and I do see Batgirl being a counter striker, if you're looking to implement that style inside the octagon at the highest level of mixed martial arts, which is the UFC, if you're looking to be that counter guy, you have to draw the strikes out of your opponent. You're not going to be able to just wait against some guys. You know, they're as good as you inside that octagon. You know, you look at Conor McGregor with the measuring of range. You know, he draws the strikes out of his opponents. And Batgirl was he was waiting a lot in that fight. Started to turn it up as the fight went along. But as for the counter striker he does need to draw these strikes out of the opponent. This is a very, very tough fight to predict. I do feel this could go really either way. Guido, you know, aggressive, really aggressive. He's got a lot of determination left in him. He's had some tough fights in the UFC. I just think his skill set is better than Batgirl's. Overall, I think he's a better fighter. The red flag, of course, is being 40 years of age. And if you get over aggressive in there at 40 and that right hand counter from Batgirl connects flush at any point, I do see him crumbling. But at the same time, if I was on Batgirl here, I would kind of think, you know, if that right hand doesn't land, is Guido going to outscore him with aggression? So either side here, I wouldn't be too confident. But I'm actually going to take the Argentine. I'm going to take Guido Cannetti. Maybe at 40 years old, he can get one more win before he retires. So yeah, Guido Cannetti via aggression, via decision. And we take a look at some odds. We have Cannetti coming in at plus 115, plus 120. Batgirl coming in minus 135, minus 130, minus 140. So yeah, that line is very understandable. If this fight took place maybe 3 or 4 years ago, I think there would be way more Cannetti takers. 40 years old, you know, lost his last fight. Although I felt he did perform well against a dangerous guy in Marlon Vera, there is red flags with Cannetti. But I am going to take him at plus money to get maybe one more win inside the octagon. Fight number 4, we have Emily Spitfire Whitmire versus Polyana Viana. And we're going to start with Whitmire. So Emily comes into this fight 2 wins, 2 losses inside the UFC. Training out of Extreme Couture. Both of her losses in the UFC have come via submission. She was able to choke out Albu in quick fashion. The only time we've really seen Emily Whitmire stand and trade over a 15-minute period was against Jamie Moyle. She was really able to use her frame, her jab, a few kicks in that fight. For the most part, I see Emily's boxing, just her frame and her boxing, being the dangerous weapon in this fight. Her opponent, the Brazilian, Viana, comes into this fight 1 win, 3 losses inside the UFC. Training out of Tata Fight Team in Brazil. Viana is primarily a BJJ practitioner, and quite a good one too. She's an 8-time state BJJ champion in Brazil. As for her striking, I prefer her as a kicker than to a boxer. So for me, Emily's going to have the better boxing. Viana, in my opinion, will have the better kicks. So already on the feet, I'm picturing a close contest when it comes to just kickboxing. Now, Viana 1-3, right? We take a look at her last performance against Macedo, very disappointing. Maybe coming to that fight a little bit overconfident with her grappling. Was taught a lesson very, very quick. Against Hannah Cyphers, wasn't able to use her jiu-jitsu and her boxing, man. Her boxing just wasn't good enough in that fight. Like I said, man, I prefer her kicks. When she comes out and utilises her kicks, she looks okay in there. But she does have to sharpen up her boxing as well. This is a really, really tough matchup to predict. I think anywhere the fight goes, I think it's going to be close. If this fight goes to the mat, maybe Viana isn't even able to use her BJJ off of her back. We've seen her fail to do that. So if this fight does go to the mat, I'd like to see Viana on top of Emily rather than on the bottom. If this fight stays on the feet, man, same again. I think it's going to be close. Emily Whitmire should be the better boxer in there. I do sense that when I look at both of these girls as strikers. But as for the kicker, I do sense Viana being the better fighter there. So, man, really, really tough fight to predict. I'm going to go with the Brazilian. I just think she's a little bit more well-rounded. Emily, man, was able to get that quick choke against Albu, was able to stand with Jamie Moyle, but there's nothing that really stands out from her game. You know, her frame is pretty decent for the weight class, but if you can really implement any of your foundation against Emily Whitmire, I do think you can have a good night. But then again, same could be said against Viana. You know, if you implement your foundation against that girl, maybe you have a good night too. It really can go one way or the other. I'm sure a lot of you guys are going to be on Emily, and a lot of you guys are going to be on Viana, and maybe a couple arguments in the comments below. But what we can agree on, this is very tough to predict. I'm going to take the Brazilian. Maybe her kicks and her jiu-jitsu is the story in this one. So for those reasons, I'll take Viana via submission in round number 2. And we take a look at some odds. Both girls coming in minus 110, minus 115. You know, that line really reflects how I feel, how everyone feels, you know. How do you pick a winner in that one? You know, whoever shows up on the night and implements everything they've been training in the last 6 to 8 weeks is going to be the winner. And it's very hard to predict, but I am going to go with the Brazilian. Fight number 5, we have Mark O, the Olympian Madsen, versus Austin Thud Hubbard. And we're going to start with the Olympian. So Marco Madsen comes into this fight 1 win, 0 losses inside the UFC. Primarily a wrestler inside the octagon, as you can tell by his octagon name. He's the Olympian, silver medalist to be precise. Very, very strong wrestler, explosive and dominant at that specific art. Mark started wrestling at 6 years old, so roughly 28, 29, maybe 30 years. Yeah, so 29, 30 years of wrestling, you know. So to say he's dominant at that specific art, maybe that's an understatement, you know. The guy's an Olympian, silver medalist in wrestling. He's extremely good at body-to-body exchanges. There's not going to be many guys that'll stop takedowns from this guy. Maybe you can get up over and over, but if this guy gets a hold of you, there's not going to be many to stop the takedown. We saw from his debut, very, very impressive. Wasted no time with his ground and pound too. So when he's getting these takedowns, he's posturing up and he is raining down heavy bombs. And I'm assuming if you get out of that position, he's going to take you down and do it again and again until he gets it right. So very impressive from Marco Madsen. The opponent, Austin Hubbard, comes into this fight 1 win, 1 loss inside the UFC, fighting out of Elevation Fight Team. Austin's debut in the UFC didn't go too well. Fought BJJ practitioner Davey Ramos, was controlled in the grappling for the majority of that fight. If I can remember correctly, I think he even dropped Davey Ramos right towards the end of that fight. So maybe the tables were turning a little bit in that one. But for the majority of it, Davey Ramos and his grappling was the story. Now looking at Austin in his most recent performance against Kyle Propolek, that was a better performance. Although he won that fight, he was clipped a few times, especially early on in that fight. And he was leg kicked quite a lot as well. Had to have a horrible, nasty surgery on his calf after that fight. If you don't remember it and you want to see how bad that surgery was, just type in Austin Hubbard leg injury and you're going to see it on Google Images. It's a horrible, horrible injury. I like this matchup for both guys. It's evident to see Austin Hubbard hasn't got the best takedown defense in the world. And it's very evident to see Madsen is a wrestler. He's not really much of a striker on the feet. He's looking to do what he's done his whole life. That's to get body to body with you and take you to the mat. Now, the reason I say I like this for both guys is because styles make fights, right? When we picture in our head, how does Madsen lose, right? The first answer might be a guy who can wrestle or a guy who can stop takedowns. But the better answer might be a guy who can knock him out. Because there's going to be guys where they're so dominant and so great at that art that they've practiced their whole life that you're not even going to be able to compete there. You know, you see it with Khabib. Not many guys can stop the takedown. No one can stop the takedown. To stop the takedown, you have to knock him out. So Austin Hubbard is a striker, and he is a way better striker than Madsen. So he is going to have that chance when Mark enters that distance, tries to close that distance to grapple. Austin Hubbard is going to have a chance to TKO him. Whether he can or not, that's a different question. I feel Madsen will eventually lose that way, but I don't know if it's going to be here. I don't know if it's going to be against Austin. So for those reasons, I am going to go with the Olympian, with the takedown and that dominant style that Mark is going to try to implement against Austin Hubbard. Am I going to take a finish? I'm not. I think Austin Hubbard's very, very tough, but I will take Madsen to keep taking him down time after time again. So for me, Madsen via decision. And we take a look at some odds in that matchup. Austin Hubbard coming in plus 180. Madsen minus 220, minus 215. Man, I agree with those odds. I agree. I do think Mark is going to look to take down Hubbard and just completely grind out that type of performance. But like I said, man, Austin Hubbard is a way better striker than Mark, and he is going to have that chance. Some people may think to beat Mark, you have to stop the takedown, but stopping the takedown is knocking that guy out. You know, same kind of thing with Khabib, I feel. You know, there's just guys like that. To stop the takedown isn't stopping it. It's knocking the opponent out. I don't think it's going to happen here, so I will take Madsen. Fight number 6, we have Rodolfo, the black belt hunter Vieira, versus Safarov. And we're going to start with the black belt hunter. So Rodolfo comes into this fight 1-0 inside the UFC. And as you can tell by his octagon name, this guy is a BJJ wizard. Not even a BJJ wizard. He's a BJJ wizard. That's how good this guy is. He's right up there with the greats in the jiu-jitsu world. 4 times BJJ world champion and 7-time World Cup winner too. So yeah, you go to the mat with this guy. He is the black belt hunter. You know, he's not looking to roll with guys who are good. He's looking for black belts to roll with. And he wants to take your black belt. He wants to show you there's levels to the black belt game. You know, that's what this guy's about. We saw that in his debut. Wasn't able to get the submission in the first round. I believe it came in the second. But he's going to work towards it, man. He's going to look for the arm, the neck, the back, the heel. Anything that you present to this guy on the mat, he's going to flow with and he's going to go with. So there's not anything specific he's looking to do. If you're on the mat with him, just rolling and just making your decision each step of the way allows this guy to then make his decision. And ultimately, his decision seems to be the best one every single time. He's just a wizard in the BJJ world. Now the opponent, Safarov, comes into this fight 1 win, 2 losses inside the UFC. Safarov is a master of sports in freestyle wrestling and a master of sports in combat sambo. He's about that grappling life too, just a different variation. Not the jiu-jitsu, he's more wrestling orientated. I was actually at his last fight in London, displayed a beautiful wrestling performance on that night, unfortunately, because I was going against him on that London card, but his sambo and his wrestling was very, very dominant on that night. Now, he has had 2 losses in the UFC. Tyson Pedro and I believe Vellante was able to finish him. Tyson Pedro had one of the best submission wins I've ever seen against this guy. The Kimura sweep, absolutely beautiful. If you haven't seen it, please make sure you go and check it out. So grappler versus grappler, wrestling versus jiu-jitsu. Neither guy on the feet is going to excite you too much. This is, I'm assuming the UFC put this together for a grappling contest. So it really would surprise me if this fight played out on the feet. If you ask Safarov, does he want to go to the mat with Vieira, he's probably going to say no. Or maybe he'll say yes. He would be wise, though, to keep this fight on the feet. Can I imagine the fight playing out on the feet? Not really. I do see this fight going to the mat. And like I said, man, Vieira is going to take whatever you present to him. Whether it's an arm, a neck, a back, a foot, the knee, anything. He's going to go with it and he's going to get you. So for Safarov, man, I wish him good luck on the mat, but I have to take the BJJ Wizard in this one. So I'm going to take Vieira via submission in round number 1. And we take a look at the odds. We have Vieira coming in minus 800. Oh my goodness. Safarov coming in plus 550, plus 600. Yeah, so the odds are absolutely insane. Like completely insane. And for those who say why are they insane? If you're very confident in Vieira, tell me why. Well, for starters, Safarov is a way better wrestler. You know, jiu-jitsu and wrestling is 2 different things. If the wrestler can keep it on the feet here, that minus 800 is going to go down to minus 110 aside, because both of these guys aren't strikers. So if Vieira is cancelled out and kept on the feet, that minus 800 is absolutely insane. Man, I think this fight could be a really fun fight. We have Jose Alteco Quinones versus Sean Sugar O'Malley, or Sugar Sean O'Malley. We're going to start with the Mexican. Quinones comes into this fight 5 wins, 2 losses inside the UFC. Primarily a kickboxer inside the octagon, and quite a tricky one too. Quinones, super movement orientated, loves to use his footwork. If you have a small frame, or you don't wrestle, or you're not used to moving a lot over a 15-minute period, Quinones will pretty much outpoint you 9 times out of 10. You know, the guy is 5-2 in the UFC, and that's because he's a tricky guy. He is a tricky guy to figure out on the feet. Loves to toe bounce, always moving, loves to move over 15 minutes. And the amount of kicks that he's firing out as well, really hard to deal with if you're not a specific type of guy. Now, we saw Nathaniel Wood have some good success against Quinones, and like I said, man, he used the grappling. You know, if you're not a grappler, if you're not a kicker, and you're not used to moving, then Quinones is going to have a good time. You have to pick one. You have to be good in one of those areas against Quinones. And that's what we saw Nathaniel Wood do. He didn't want to stand and kickbox with Quinones. That would have been a very close fight. He felt the best way to beat this guy was the takedown. Now, Sean O'Malley's a different type of guy to Nathaniel Wood. And that's why I like this fight stylistically, because I feel both of these guys have a similar style, but a little bit different. So, Sugar Sean O'Malley comes into this fight 2-0 inside the UFC, also primarily a kickboxer inside the octagon. And Sean's been away for literally 2 years. 2 years, man. It doesn't feel like it. You know, time completely flies when you're having fun. Sean is super tall and long for bantamweight. Roughly 6 foot tall with a 72-inch reach. For 135, that's completely insane. So, yeah, man, good luck to anyone who doesn't have a big frame for 135 coming up against Sean O'Malley. To deal with that reach and that height at 35 is absolutely madness. And Sean O'Malley is a dangerous kicker. He'll switch his stances constantly and pepper you with a wide variety of kicks. He'll pepper you so much with the kicks that you completely forget about his hands. And once you're concentrated on the kicks, that's when the hands start to land. That's when Sean O'Malley becomes a dangerous puncher. And some of you may think, man, O'Malley, a dangerous puncher? I don't think so. I would agree, right? You look at the first round, the second round, Sean O'Malley is not landing big punches. But if you look at Sukumtar, if you look at this guy in the I believe the second and third round, the amount of kicks that O'Malley was able to land, he then started to set him down and rock him with his own punches. So O'Malley is a super dangerous guy, alright? The frame already makes him dangerous. The reach, the switching of stances to give the opponent different looks constantly, you know? Now you're worrying about the left kick. Now you're worrying about the right kick. You know, it's so much to deal with Sean O'Malley. And like I said, once you become so worried with those kicks, now he's able to tag you with the hands. A little bit like Stephen Thompson, you know? We broke down Thompson versus Luque a few months ago. And I said for that breakdown, if Stephen Thompson starts to tag you with his hands, best believe he's completely happy with the timing he has on you with the kicks. You know, the same kind of thing here. If you see O'Malley start to land the hands, best believe that guy is completely happy with his timing with the kicks for the opponent. So stylistically, very, very good fight. Both of these guys way better kickers than punchers, and that's going to make for a fun fight. It's going to be interesting to see who lands the more meaningful kicks throughout this fight. For me, it's going to be Sugar Sean. I think that frame is just way too much to deal with at 135. And, you know, Sean's basically meeting Quinones at his own game and potentially maybe going to beat him at his own game. So for those reasons, I'm going to take Sugar Sean O'Malley via decision. And we take a look at some odds. We have, man, Sean O'Malley coming in minus 330. Quinones coming in plus 280, plus 290. And I think that line is a bit off. There's a bit of disrespect going on there for Quinones. I think he's a good guy, you know. Not the best style in the world to watch. We do like to see guys use their boxing, trade in the pocket. Quinones is way more of a point fighter. But that's hard to figure out, man. You know, if you're fighting against a guy like that and you're not really used to fighting that way, it can be very tricky in there. But Sean has got the frame. He does love to kick like Quinones, loves to switch the stance up. And that's why I think Sean should win this fight. Should he be minus 350? I don't think so. So I'm not going to be touching that line. But the pick is going to be Sugar Sean. Alright, homies, you know what time it is. It's that special time. Before we get into the main card, we're going to have a little smoke break, a little chat, a little relax from this card, and then get straight back into it. Okay, so, as always, here's the poll from last week. If you want to have your say on the main event for this card, Israel Adesanya, actually, and the co-main, I have two polls for both title fights. If you want to have your say, please go to the community tab and make your vote. These polls will be posted every single breakdown and prediction video, so, you know, you may as well join in. Here's the poll from last week. We had 350 votes, and a quick little reminder to the 1, 2, and sometimes 3 people that vote after the main event. I take a screenshot before the main event happens, so you're not going to get your sneaky predictions in after the main event. That's not fair, okay? We play fair here. We had 350 votes, 36% coming in on the Brazilian, 64% coming in on the veteran. It doesn't matter what pick you made there, you know, that's a good pick. Benavidez definitely had a path. He's a veteran. He's proved it time and time again. If you picked Figueiredo, I felt you also made a good pick. Came in overweight, has power, has a very good, well-rounded background, you know, trained in a lot of arts, and big believer of the Brazilian. So whoever you pick there, good pick. Just make sure you have your say on the co-main and the main event of this card. Okay, a couple comments. And before we get into the comments, we had the big man, Mike Bisbing, tweeting me back A little bit of appreciation there for my comment to him. And I know some of you guys don't like Mike Bisping on the commentary. I know some of you guys love him on the commentary too. I just love him, man. You know, the guy's got one eye. He's a warrior. Absolutely loves the sport. You can feel it, you know, even if he's wrong in what he says at the time. You know, you're never going to agree every single time with the commentary team, but they're there to do a job. You know, they're there to narrate and give you their personal beliefs on what's happening, you know, and you can only do that really if you love the sport, and Mike Bisping completely loves the sport. Okay, let's spark this back up. Okay, so a couple comments we have. Jonathan Bernal. I'm ready for these fights. I love the content. You've kickstarted me into betting. Thank you. Well, amen to that, bro. Obviously, you know, I don't want to have you send me a comment say you've lost your house. I hope you're betting responsibly, taking some advice here and there, but ultimately making your own decisions, putting up a stake that's obviously not dangerous for you to risk, because that is gambling. You know, it's a gamble. We know the definition of gamble. We can be wrong, we can be right. The most important thing is stay within your means. Accept you could be wrong, but you can be right too. So I'm glad I'm helping you, Jonathan. Savage Montana, never felt so inspired about betting like I do since joining this channel. Great community. And that's a complete amen right there. You know, that's an amen. You know, I love this community, guys. I love all the feedback you give week in, week out. I love hearing who you're taking. You know, some weeks I may have 3 underdogs. Last week I had 6 underdogs, you know. So it's always interesting for me to see how many of you guys are going to be on plus money lines with me. How many of you guys are going to be on like a minus 220 Magomed with me. You know, it's always interesting for me to find out, because I'm speaking to you guys week in, week out. You know, we're growing this community and we're having a great time here. So Savage Montana, I'm glad you are having a good time, my friend. Okay, spark this up and get back into the predictions. And if you haven't noticed, guys, or maybe some of you have noticed, I've got a new microphone. So if the audio does sound better to you, please be sure to let me know in the comments, because this microphone set me back a good £120, you know. So please let me know if the audio does sound a bit better to you. You know, hopefully it does. All right, homies. Hope you've had a good smoke break. Let's get back into this main card, breaking down these fights and making predictions. First fight on the main card, we have Alex Cowboy Oliveira versus Max Payne Griffin. And we're going to start with the Brazilian. So Cowboy Oliveira comes into this fight 9 wins, 6 losses inside the UFC. Primarily a Muay Thai fighter inside the octagon. Can use his jiu-jitsu here and there. Has used his jiu-jitsu here and there. So what can we say about this guy? He's fought a lot of top competition, and that's because he is top competition himself. He's on a 3-fight losing streak. Those losses coming to Mike Perry, Gunnar Nelson, and Nicholas Dalby. But regardless of that, man, Cowboy Oliveira is a guy we love to watch fight. This guy is very entertaining. He's always in entertaining fights. It can get very, very nasty in there. He's always down to cut the opponent, be cut himself. Just an exciting guy, you know, a guy we love to watch fight. Isn't the best fighter in the world, probably is never going to crack that top 10 in the weight class, but I respect this guy, man. He's a nasty fighter, beautiful elbows and knees up against the fence. His jiu-jitsu works for him sometimes, works against him when he goes to the mat sometimes as well, but this guy, very entertaining. The opponent, Max Griffin, comes into this fight 3 wins, 5 losses inside the UFC. Primarily a striker inside the octagon. Griffin is a 2nd degree black belt in kickboxing. He's been kickboxing from a very young age. I've said that a few times on this channel. Just a good guy, man. Max Griffin, he loves to use that stick and move type of performance. You see that against Mike Perry. You know, big upset win on the night. You know, pretty much everyone was on Mike Perry. I don't believe I even had my channel at this point, but remembering and rewatching that performance from Max Griffin, that stick and move was very pleasing to see. Most recently, you look at the losses against Thiago Alves, Curtis Millender and Alex Morono, and what I noticed from those fights is if Max Griffin doesn't have the grappling advantage or the footwork advantage, if he isn't able to utilize one of those two, then most of his rounds are very close, like very, very close. Maybe he had the advantage in the footwork in that first round against Thiago Alves. And I had Griffin in that fight. I felt he actually edged and won that fight, and he got the loss. He got a split loss in Brazil. But rewatching it, man, you can see how it's happening. You know, you can see the footwork advantage from the first round really went in that second and third round. And that's because Griffin maybe put out a lot of strikes in that first round, came close to finishing Thiago Alves. But yeah, for the most part, I see Max Griffin being a good guy when he has the footwork advantage or the grappling advantage. Really tough fight to predict. Fundamentally, I would say Griffin is the better kickboxer, but when it comes to opening someone up, getting some blood on the canvas, you know, that's what Cowboy Oliveira's about. You know, he's down to be nasty in there. He doesn't mind being close, using that dirty boxing, using the elbows, even being cut himself. You know, he's gonna put on his type of fight. And if you can keep up with that kind of pace, if you're a real tough guy that doesn't mind being opened up, getting the swollen eye, then you really can compete with Oliveira. But I don't feel that from Max Griffin. You know, I feel he wants to stick and move a lot. He doesn't want to be hitting there. And obviously, I'm a big believer of defense, right? But it's really hard to be defensively sound in MMA. You know, you see it in boxing with Floyd Mayweather. You can really be defensively great when it comes to boxing, but in mixed martial arts, when you can get kicked, elbowed, kneed, grappled, everything, you know, it's really hard to not take damage. And I feel Max Griffin kind of wilts when it comes to that type of stuff, when it gets a little dirty in there. So for that reason, I'm actually going to take the Brazilian to end his losing streak here. I'll take Alex Oliveira via decision. And we take a look at some odds if I can find them. We have Oliveira coming in minus 160, minus 150. Okay. Max Griffin plus 135, plus 120, plus 125. So yeah, the line's pretty okay. I feel the line is playable either side. If you're on Oliveira, he's not a big favourite. If you're on Griffin, you know, not a small underdog, not the big underdog either. Plus 130, minus 160. Very good line either side. I think it will be a close fight. I think both guys are good kickboxers. Griffin's a decent wrestler. Oliveira has that jiu-jitsu and that warrior mentality. Really hard to picture this one in your head. You know, you see it many ways and you could be wrong, but I just feel Oliveira's too nasty. He's a little bit too nasty for Griffin. That's what I feel for this one. Make sure you let me know in the comments though. I'd really love to know what you guys think about this one. You know, the whole card so far. Let me know what you think about Oliveira and Griffin. Fight number 9, we have Neil Magney versus JingLiang Li. And we're going to start with Neil. So Neil comes into this fight, 14 wins, 6 losses inside the UFC. This will be his 21st UFC fight. Fighting out of Elevation Fight Team, which is a very good camp. Neil is primarily a striker inside the octagon. 6'3" with an 80-inch reach. It's been almost a year and a half since we've last seen Neil Magney fight. Looking back at his last one against Ponzinibbio, completely blasted out of the water in that fight. The low calf kick from Ponzinibbio time and time again really slowed down Neil Magney in that fight. Really kept him on the outer ring, circling against the fence. And that was dangerous, you know, against a powerful striker in Ponzinibbio. As long as Magney can dictate the movement and not be taken down and controlled, he is a problem for anyone inside the octagon. The opponent, JingLiang Li, comes into this fight 9 wins, 3 losses inside the UFC. Primarily a striker inside the octagon, just like Neil Magney. JingLiang is also a black belt in BJJ. The Leech. He is becoming more and more dangerous every single fight. I knew how dangerous this guy was. He's a Sanda practitioner, which is Chinese kickboxing. I always knew how dangerous this guy was, but when you see him go out there and completely dominate Zaleski, you know, that really puts it into words how dangerous this guy is. You know, he is getting better and better every single fight. That Sanda Chinese kickboxing is such a composed art. And you see it in people like Zabit or Weili Zhang or even JingLiang Li himself. You know, that Chinese kickboxing is a beautiful, beautiful art. This is a very, very good fight. As the card comes closer to the co-main and main event, these fights get better and better and they get harder and harder to predict. But for the most part in this one, I just see Li keeping Magney on the outside, blasting him with low kicks similar to what Ponzinibbio did. And the hooks up top should be complete money in this fight for Li. So yeah, man, like I said earlier on for O'Malley, you know, when O'Malley starts landing the kicks low, you forget about his hands. Li may not be the best kicker in the world, but if you're a guy with skinny, long legs like Neil Magney, you know, when they start to get kicked, it doesn't matter if you're the best kicker in the world or not. You start to worry about the kicks. And you saw that against Ponzinibbio. That's why Magney went out flat on his face the way he did. He really wanted to protect those legs. Too tough for his own good to keep going the way he did. And I think it's going to be something similar here. I just think Li is a really composed striker. And I think he's going to pick his shots with Magney. And when he starts connecting, I think it's going to get worse and worse there for Neil Magney. So for those reasons, I'm going to take JingLiang Li via TKO in round number 1. Man, this is a good fight. We have Benny Dariush versus Draka Klose. And we're going to start with Dariush. So Benny comes into this fight 11 wins, 4 losses, 1 draw inside the UFC. Training out of King's MMA. This will be his 17th UFC fight, I believe. So really becoming a household name in the UFC. For those of you who don't know, or maybe for those who do know but don't know to the full extent, Benil Dariush is an amazing jiu-jitsu practitioner, a black belt in BJJ, 5 submission wins inside the UFC, and prior to the UFC, he competed in a bunch of high-level BJJ championships, and I don't think he ever finished outside of the top 3 in all of those high-level championships. So, yeah, Benil Dariush, man, BJJ wizard. Maybe not to the level of Rodolfo Vieira, but if you're just underneath that guy, you know, you've made it in the BJJ world. Very, very good jiu-jitsu, Benil Dariush. And you look at his last performance, and even the performance against Drew Dober, you know, BJJ getting it done in both of those matches. So if you go to the mat or you grapple with Dariush, you're really in his world. The opponent, Draka Klose, comes into this fight 5 wins, 1 loss inside the UFC. Now this guy is primarily a wrestler and a striker inside the octagon. All 5 of his UFC wins coming via decision. Very, very solid guy inside the octagon who seems to be evolving. Maybe slowly, but he does seem to be evolving. The wrestling against Mark Diakisi a couple years ago, very, very impressive. His kickboxing against Lando and Bobby Green, also very impressive. All 3 of those guys are tough 155ers to beat, and Draka passed the test in all 3 of those fights. So yeah, this guy isn't perfect, right? I can see a couple of holes in his game. You look at the fight against Giagos, right? Giagos was able to control Draka Klose for a few moments in that fight. And if you see Beneil Dariush in those moments, right? If you can picture Dariush up against the fence, getting the opportunities that Giagos had, then I think it could be a very quick night for Draco Klose. I think Beneil definitely has the chance to use his jiu-jitsu in this one, and seeing Draco Klose as a wrestler, even more chance to use your jiu-jitsu. However, both of these guys, when they're not using their foundation, which is wrestling and jiu-jitsu, both of these guys seem fairly comfortable to kickbox with the opponent. So if there is no grappling in the first minute, the first 2 minutes, it is going to still be interesting to see who's getting the better exchanges on the feet. For my money, I think, this one I've been really back and forth in. Really, really good fight. I just think if Draco Klose is able to kickbox for at least 2 minutes every round and counteract the BJJ with his wrestling, then I think he has a good chance also to win this fight. It's a real tough one to predict because I look at both of these fighters with great appreciation. I think they're very, very good fighters inside the octagon. You're never going to have an easy night against either of these guys. Maybe unless you're Alex Hernandez and you come in like a bull within 5 seconds, 10 seconds. But both of these guys are very good grapplers. And it's hard to predict, but I have to take Draco Klose. Something is telling me to take Draco Klose. I think he's going to get good exchanges, good moments on the feet with Beneil. And if he's able to use that wrestling to stop the BJJ, use it in a defensive way, I think he could nick this fight here. Very, very tough call to make, and I could be wrong because Beneil is a guy, even if you look good, right? Drew Dober looked very good. I made that pick that night, Drew Dober to beat Beneil, and he looked good up until he got subbed, right? So doesn't matter how good you look in there for 2 or 3 minutes with Beneil. If you find yourself in a bad position, he is going to take it. So I could be very wrong on this one, but something in me is telling me Draco Klose is going to do this. So for that reason, I'm going to take Draco Klose via decision. And we take a look at some odds. Beneil Dariush coming in -170, -160. Draco coming back +145, +135, +150. So we don't really know where the line should be too much on that one. Maybe that'll clarify later on in the week. But that is going to be an underdog play for me. Something in me is saying Draco Klose is going to be in this fight. Like I said, man, Beneil is a BJJ wizard, and I want to make that known. Most people know this guy. He's had many fights, but most people don't know how good his jiu-jitsu is. He's very, very good. Very good fight. I'm on the dog money there. Co-main event, and a very, very good co-main event indeed. We have Whitmire Magnum Zhang versus Joanna Boogie Woman Young Jacek, or however you say her last name. I'm going to say Young Jacek. We're going to start with the title holder, Whitmire Zhang. Comes into this fight 4-0 inside the UFC. The strawweight champion. Another Chinese Sanda practitioner. Completely destroyed Jessica Andrade in the biggest fight of her life. Real quick, real power. Zhang, you look at her compared to every other fighter inside this weight class, man. It's clear to see her power. It is something that it is really working for her. She has tremendous power for the weight class. Her skill set is also great to watch. Everything about her game I pretty much love. The composure, the power, her kicks, her grappling, her elbows. Everything about Whitmire Zhang impresses me. There's not a foot this girl can put out of place when I'm watching her. Very, very good fighter. Very powerful. She's a beast in there, man. You watch her training videos during this whole coronavirus, and she's still going at it. This girl is a powerful, powerful girl. And absolutely, if she can win this fight, this girl will be spoken about with Amanda Nunes and Valentina for potentially being, up there with the greatest fighters. If she wins this fight and goes on to defend multiple times, there's no reason why this girl can't arguably be the greatest female fighter of all time. That is how high I regard Weili Zhang. However, the opponent is also great in my opinion. Joanna Boogie Woman comes into this fight. I'm not even sure of her UFC record. I believe maybe 7-3, 8-3, something like that. Only ever lost to Rose Namajunas and Valentina Shevchenko. The only girl she lost to prior her UFC career was Valentina Shevchenko in Muay Thai. Joanna is a Muay Thai expert, 6 times world Muay Thai champion. You know, so when you think about this fight from a striking point of view, you get very, very excited, man. Both of these girls are extremely good strikers. Now, this fight really can go either way, right? There's going to be a lot of you guys taking Zhang. There's going to be a lot of you guys taking Joanna. Does Weili Zhang have the power in her punches to put out Joanna? Absolutely. If you're taking Joanna, you cannot deny that. Zhang does have the power. She proved that. You know, Jessica Andrade she's like a Romero for the female division. You know, she's made of metal too. And to see Zhang put on that performance the way she did, you know, it gives you goosebumps, really. But Joanna, man, her footwork, her movement, her output, her know-how in the championship rounds, that's something she has over Weili Zhang. And I do think she is going to use that to her advantage in this title fight. If it gets to that 4th and 5th round, despite how much of a beast Zhang is, I really can't see anyone else dictating that 4th and 5th round other than Joanna. Even in the Rose Namajunas, the second fight, I felt Joanna in the 4th and 5th round was very, very good. It's a very, very hard title fight to predict. But I'm going to stick with the Boogie Woman. I think her movement, her output, her know-how, she's been there before. I just think it may be a little bit too much for Weili Zhang, especially over a 25-minute period. So for those reasons, I'm going to take the Boogie Woman to get her strap back and to win via decision. And we take a look at some odds. Joanna coming in plus 150, plus 140, plus 160. So once again, we have an underdog line that we don't really know where it is. It will clarify later in the week. Zhang, a favourite line. We don't know where it should be. We have -2, -190, -180, -170, and even -160 and 50. So that line is very all over the place. If you can find the right odds for you on your bookmaker, I'd take them when you can, or maybe wait it out. For me, I feel more comfortable taking the plus money line, Joanna, but Zhang absolutely has the chance to retain her title here too. She's a beast. Main event time, homies, and if you haven't darce choked the like button, please make sure you do. We have Israel, the last style bender, Adesanya versus Yoel, Soldier of God, Romero. And we're going to start with the last style bender. Adesanya comes into this fight 7-0 inside the UFC, primarily a kickboxer inside the octagon, training out of City Kickboxing, which I don't even need to say because you all know that. We love that camp right now. Israel is a master of range. He's a master of timing. He's a master of movement. He is the Anderson Silva of the modern day in my beliefs. He doesn't have huge punching power. We've never seen him punch someone and say, wow, look at that guy. That guy's got power. We never say that. But what he does have is that timing, that master timing, and the accuracy to read what's going on in front of him. You know, the movements, the feints. He's Anderson Silva, man, of the modern day. And there's not much you can do against that type of guy other than clip him, right? So for Adesanya, you know, he's going to use that accuracy and that timing that we've seen him use. We saw it against Kelvin Gastelum. We saw it against Robert Whittaker, Brunson, Tavares even for 25 minutes as well. Adesanya is a master at kickboxing. He's very, very good there. And it's going to be tough to beat this guy. I've never picked against Israel Adesanya. I took him in the debut when he was held against the fence by Rob Wilkinson And from there, you know, a lot of people said, well, this guy's not going to go far. And then Marvin Vettori even had a very good performance where he was able to hold down Adesanya. Adesanya looked like a fish out of water on his back. But we've only seen this guy improve massively from these fights. You know, every single fight, this guy gets better and better. And I'm, you know, if you listen to me week in, week out, you know I'm a huge believer in the law of attraction. And, you know, saying everything I believe on this channel, saying absolutely everything I believe, there is going to be times when people do laugh at my beliefs. You know, some people felt the law of attraction with the Dom Reyes against John Jones was a ridiculous call. But now when you come back to think of that fight against John Jones, you know, law of attraction is a huge thing, in my opinion, for success in anything you do in life. We saw that with Conor McGregor. When you speak what you want, when you visualize what you want, when you dream constantly, every single day, every minute, every hour, when you fill your mind and your existence with what you want, it's easier to bring that to reality. And Israel Adesanya is a guy who's doing the exact same thing. His law of attraction is beautiful. You know, his visualization really shows in the way he performs inside the octagon. Now the opponent, Yoel Romero, comes into this fight 9 wins, 3 losses inside the UFC. An absolute freak of a man, made of steel, hits like a train. This guy has been the underdog in most of his fights in the UFC. He's 42 years of age and still a very, very dangerous guy in the octagon. We know what Romero's about. He's a sprinter. And if he's not sprinting, he's thinking when he's going to sprint. So for fight terms, what I just said there was, if he's not looking to decapitate you, he's just waiting and thinking when to decapitate you. So if he's not going after the finish, he's mainly just looking like a guy who's taking a few kicks, taking a few punches up top, but nothing's really putting him out. You know, the guy is made of steel. So for those saying Adesanya's going to finish Romero, I do think that's a possibility. But at the same time, man, Romero he's made of steel, you know, and that gives him a good chance of always landing that big blow up top. You know, if he takes 3 rounds of damage and he's still there, then he still has that big bomb, that big chance to win the fight. And we see that a lot over in his UFC career. So for this one, man, I think it's pretty clear, right? I think for Romero to win this fight, he has to TKO Israel Adesanya. For Adesanya to win this fight, I think he has to avoid being TKO'd. Now, some of you may say Romero is a very, very good wrestler. Why don't you think he's going to use his wrestling? Now, of course, that's a possibility with Romero. But I think he's going to prefer the sprinter, the big explosion over wrestling in this one. And the reasons for that, I think if you're a wrestler and you're shooting for takedowns and you're looking to wrestle in the first and the second round, if it doesn't go to plan, you're now exhausted, right? And being exhausted against a master of timing and range in Israel Adesanya, that's going to be very dangerous for Romero. So I don't think he's going to exhaust himself using his wrestling. Maybe he could, and prove me wrong, and look to get a TKO that way. But if I had to predict it, I would say Romero is going to look to decapitate Adesanya. And when he's not, he's just simply thinking about it, waiting for it, moving, absorbing a few kicks. And just he's going to sprint, and go for that type of performance. I think as the rounds go on, Romero is going to look more fatigued, and the opponent is going to look more like a master of controlling range and being accurate with his timing. So for those reasons, I'm going to take Israel, the last style bender, Adesanya, via decision. I just think Romero's too tough to be finished. Obviously, Romero does have a chance, that TKO, that big puncher's chance. And I think it would be wise if you was ending a couple bets in Adesanya, if you had the chance to cover on Romero TKO, because that prop will be like plus 400. As always, homies, leave down in the comments who you're taking, your underdogs, your favourites, your most confident, and let's get engaging on this big pay-per-view card. Peace.